Hello, everyone out there in podcast world. Hope you're having a wonderful day. You are listening to or watching Service Business Mastery Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Tersh Blissett, sitting virtually next to my co-host, Joshua Crouch. And we have Zach with Mantle on the podcast today. And we actually had this scheduled a couple other times, but it's crazy holidays. And I appreciate you being patient with us and working around our schedule. But basically, if you haven't heard of Mantle before, we're going to get into a lot of details about it, and but it's going to help you close deals in the home. What
I'm really excited about too is we're going to talk about a pretty detailed study that Zach and his team have done to understand what homeowners want in the home when it comes to selling. Like, it's going to be some really useful data. We've looked over the report. It's really useful information. So if you're listening to this, take note of this, read the report, implement. I repeated it. Your audio is not broken. I'm literally saying it 3 times. Implement what you learn from this to change your marketing approach, because consumer behavior is changing. We'll get into some of that stuff here.
Some of this stuff that we need to be putting on our website.
Do you know a website
guy, and even marketing and how to think about getting customers to your website. It might influence a little bit of that thinking as well.
Welcome to the show, Zach. If you don't mind, would you introduce yourself and a little bit about yourself, your background, and what all Mantle is doing?
Yeah, I'm excited to be on. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I would say that at a high level, Mantle, we partner with the best contractors, plumbers, electricians, HVAC techs, garage door companies to help them close more and delight homeowners. And really my experience and how we think about it is, I used to work at Amazon. At Amazon, we were even talking about it before we started recording, really easy to find and buy what you want. I got into home services because my mom had a bunch of contractors in her house. Being the dutiful son, I was like, sure, Mom, I'll help you with this. And quickly my head was spinning with SEER ratings and refrigerant and variable speed. And the thing that I was struck by when I took a step back was it didn't feel like a shopping experience. It felt like we were getting lectured at and shown 1 or 2 options by the strange person in the home.
And they're probably just as confused too, half the time.
Totally. And if you take 2 or 3 of them together and the different answers you're getting across all of them, you're like, wait, how do I make sense of all this?
Isn't exactly. That like talking about 3 digital marketing companies? You're more confused after you talk to the 3rd one than you were before you started.
And you get everybody gets a report, and every report's different, and you don't know what any of them mean.
Yeah. Totally. And I think, like, taking a step back, and I think it really came from this homeowner-centric view, and this customer-centric view is just, hey, like, it's actually a shopping experience. Like, how do you let homeowners feel like it's personalized in the terms, feel empowered to make the choices? And more than anything, right? We can talk about all the features and functionalities. The concept's actually really simple, if not hard, without the right software to execute. How do you just let the homeowner be the shopper again?
You know, it's interesting you say that, because we talked about this right before we went on, because we're all big fans of Marcus Sheridan, and I was just at a 2-day training, and the Questions First training, which is one of his companies, was all about, it's not about telling someone what to do. It's about asking the right questions to get them to self-discover, or in this case, buy, to make the purchase. Because, I mean, most people have buyer's remorse because they were either sold, they weren't really ready to buy. Like, they were pushed into a decision they weren't really ready for. If it's something that you know you want, and you have personally made that decision, and you clicked the button and you did the thing, or you handed them the card, like, it's your decision. You own that decision. And it's the same thing when you self-discover through questions. You made the discovery. Someone didn't tell you what you had to do. You came up with the idea yourself, and that ownership, I feel like, has such a big piece of any of these things that we're talking about today, because that ownership it's a big expense. Like, I mean, some of these systems, I mean, one of my team members was quoted last week by a really large HVAC company here that they've had a service contract with, and she shared with the price. And it's been a few years since I've looked at pricing of HVAC systems since I was in the trades.
Dude.
And I'm like,
just run.
Holy hell. I'm like, is that for the furnace too? What? Because we don't
Yeah.
need the heat much here in Arizona. And she's like, no. And I'm like, what size is your system? And Arizona, everything's bigger here because we just like in Georgia where Tersh is, you got to have a bigger system. It was like a 5-ton system. It was like 15 grand. That was the retail was like 18. I'm like, for just the AC? And it blew my mind because I was like, man, I remember building price books 4 or 5 years
You remember
ago.
we could buy a system for $900?
Yes.
Yeah,
That was like a
you can hang
2-ton.
that up.
That was like a
You can't
2-ton.
get
You
the
get,
fan
you
motor
get
for
2-ton, 13
$900.
seer. Yeah. And it was
Yeah.
like, my goodness. And I'm thinking she's asking me about the price and all this. And it's kind of like rejogged my memory of all this stuff. And it was kind of crazy to think about where we have gone. That is a huge purchase for somebody.
Third most expensive. Yeah, third most expensive purchase most Americans will buy in their lifetime. They'll buy it 2.4 times is a heating and cooling system. Unlike purchase number one, home, or purchase number two, car. Typically, there's some excitement around the car, around the home.
See it after the fact.
Zach, you're telling me when you helped your parents, you were not excited.
I was not.
With
I was
3 to
not.
5 companies and buy a new heating and cooling system.
Maybe I'm the weirdo here.
HOA says I have to put a fence around this thing. Oh, hell no, I ain't putting a fence around this. Everybody's going to look at this thing. It was expensive.
It better shine.
Exactly. I'm gonna when I bring guests over to my home, and we're gonna take a detour outside to look at this condenser.
Is there any way y'all can put the condenser next to the front door? That way, everybody has to look at it right when they come in.
Hang on, let's go up in the attic when it's 150 up to. Come on, just come see this air handler I got. That thing is pristine.
It's funny you mentioned the condenser in front of the front door. Second ride along I ever went on very early in my days in home services. We show up at a home and the condenser is literally right by the front door. Like it is literally in the center. At that point, I'd only ever seen 2 homes in this context before. I was like, well, I guess 50% of the time the condenser is right by the front door.
That's funny. Well, at least you know it's there. If it happens to be in a rough neighborhood, like it's not stolen yet.
That's true.
So I didn't realize this, but you weren't able to read until 10, is that right? But still ended up in law school?
Yeah, I'm dyslexic, so I didn't read until I was in the 4th or 5th grade.
We are going to be best buds.
Wait, Josh,
there's going to be no reading. It's going to be all voice text.
Great. Excellent. Yeah, totally. So it took me a little bit longer to learn how to read. And I think through a lot of the support of my parents and a couple teachers, I'd say it took me longer to get there, but once I got there, decent at it. And so I went to law school in a previous life. And there was a lot of reading there. I think though more than anything, and Tersh, I'd be curious to hear about your experience. I think more than anything, sort of dealing with dyslexia, I think 2 things became really clear to me. One is just the value of persistence, right? Just if you keep chipping away at something, maybe it takes you longer than the next person, but you can make progress. And 2, there's a lot of different ways to get to the final goal, right?
Exactly. I was adult diagnosed. So it
that's incredible. Yeah, we were 2 entirely different. Yeah. At least at a relatively young age, I was able to understand or be able to put a word around why reading was hard and why I didn't seem to be tracking with peers.
My first was just totally slow.
And the craziest thing is my junior and senior year, I was at Georgia Tech. My junior and senior year of high school, I was at Georgia Tech. So I was dual enrolled, and I learned spatial awareness very young. I didn't know that. That's what I knew. I could tell math. I was okay. I mean, I was good at math, good enough to do engineering, but I was had I been so my mom was a doctor in education. So she was a teacher my whole life. She's been a teacher. So for me, it was just, she helped me just work around. I mean, I was never even considered going to diagnose because I was still doing a lot better than classmates were. And I learned a lot of workarounds. I learned all about how much I loved automation because I didn't want to have to read it 3 times. And it's one of those things where they would ask me to get up in front of the class to read. And I was like, look, I'll take an F. I will straight up take an F because I know I can pass the test, the rest of the test. I can pass the homework. but I am not standing up in front of this class to
Yeah.
do this. And then I stood up at graduation in front of 7,000 people. And that's the reason I started the podcast. I have the speech impediment, which honestly is more so the delayed diagnosis of the dyslexia. Honestly, that's part of what it is. And so, I was 32, 33 when I was diagnosed with dyslexia and ADD. And
dude, that was like 25 years ago.
Right. Look
It's
at the
not
two
often
of
I get
us.
to make fun of
Which
his age.
one
He
of
always
us
points out that
looks
I'm
like they're 70 years old?
Okay, boys. Let's stay friendly. You know, Tersh was just being vulnerable with us, and I really apprate you sharing. You sharing
if he's
with us.
vulnerable, that's my time to strike, man. That's like Cobra Kai, strike, no mercy.
Yeah, that's Josh.
Awesome. So,
But yeah, no,
Go ahead.
Zach, so it's interesting. So overcoming that obstacle, like what was your experience, especially as a kid? Because kids are harsh.
Yeah, totally. I think for me, it was just this idea of really early, like I'm different, right? I'd get pulled out an hour a day. Well, I mean, it's kind of funny, like how initially my parents were like, yeah, maybe something's up. We're on a road trip somewhere. They hand me a book. I like read the book and they ask me about it. And I tell them, it's like, oh, it's about a dog and the story, blah, blah, blah. And then they asked me, and I get it all right. Like I understood everything that was going on. And then they asked me to read the book to them. And my mom got a little bit of a clue that something was off, that the book was actually upside down.
Oh,
Like the entire, because I was just going off of the imagery and context and able to like figure it out. But yeah, I mean, I got pulled out of the room. I'd get an hour a day of sort of individualized like tutoring. And in hindsight, like two things can be true. One, really difficult experience. And at third grade, what do you want? You just want to be with all of your friends. But on the second side, it's also like really grateful that it was identified. I was able to get the help right relatively early on. And I think one of the things that really left a lasting imprint to this day is how do you really try to meet someone where they're at to help them go to wherever you're ultimately trying to go to. And I actually think in a strange way, it's even applicable to what we do here at Mantle. It's like homeowners have a wide variety of prior knowledge about their heating and cooling system. Usually very little, but like there is some variety there. And so how do you try to craft a personalized experience that meets that homeowner based upon what they care about, based upon their home, based upon what's important to them, where they're at, to ultimately get them to the promised land of, hey, here's a great system for you. And Josh, to your point earlier, if you get them, if you inform them, if you get them there, and if they're the ones driving it, you won't have a lot of next day rejects or cancellations, right? Because they were really bought into it. And so I think that was a really seminal learning from that early experience.
You know, really quick, two statistics that I'd love to share. So 80% of homeowners, when asked what brand HVAC system they have in their house, they say Honeywell, because that's what's on the wall. That's the thermostat. And then 90% of all statistics are made up per George Washington.
I heard 95% Tersh, so I might have to challenge you on it, but I
mean,
we actually use that on a slide in our breakout just to get some laughs and stuff, because we get like a couple stats of automation stuff or whatever, and it's like, yeah, and all these are probably made up.
Totally. But like I have been on ride-alongs, and one of the things that we feel really strongly about at Mantle is spending a lot of time in the field. And so like any given week, 30-40% of our team is in the field with contractors. And I've been on ride-alongs where straight up the CA or selling tech will be like, hey, so like tell me about your existing system. They're like, oh yeah, that Honeywell is really good, or that Ecobee. And of course, like me and the CA are looking at each other being like, okay. But it's understandable because like for most homeowners, it's just the thermostat. Yeah. Hopefully they don't have to deal with it until it stopped working. Some stranger came to their house and told them it was going to be $15,000 just to replace the AC.
To replace the thing that's on my wall? Until I got into air conditioning, I had no idea the thing that was up in the attic did anything. Didn't have a clue. I thought that somebody just left it there. I mean, I was ignorant when it comes to air conditioning, for sure.
Yeah. So I got a question for you. It's curious. So you guys are a software company, an education company, but what about having your team be in the field? Why was that so important for you?
Yeah. I think it was partially informed. Previous life, I worked at Amazon. One of the things, 14 core leadership principles, I'd argue maybe the most important is customer obsession. And the idea of that is stay really obsessed and do what's in the best interest of the customer. And while we can be in our office and we can be with other sort of tech people, ultimately we are building for a really different user, right? Either a 20-year plus comfort advisor selling tech or some really nice old lady like my mom who's not even trying to interact with our software. And so I think it's really that focus on, for us to build the best product and to be as useful as possible, we really need to understand the problem and also have the humility to be in the field and to watch someone use our tool and to see where they struggle. Like, I think one of the more humbling moments for me as someone who, like, at the end of the day builds software is when I'm riding with a tech and they tell me about all of their software on their iPad and they tell me about all the things that they like don't use, right? And I think that idea of like really meeting that frontline user where they're at. And of course, like the thought that's going through my head is like, I wonder what they say about us when I'm not riding with them. And so it's really focusing on that and focusing on making sure that we're building software that is usable and useful to the end users.
That's awesome. I really like that approach from a software side, especially not being in like inside of these home service companies, because a lot of times software companies will come in like, you guys need to do this. And they're like, well, do you even know what we do on a regular basis and how we do it? You know, so I think there's the customer obsession is super important on that end, especially if you don't know this, if you haven't been inside these businesses. So
can you share about the report that, I mean, cause you have a,
I was just going to transition into that, because you put together a report surveying over 400 homeowners about how they go about shopping for a new HVAC or new piece of equipment, essentially. I guess, first of all, before we go into the findings of that report, why did you decide to do this? Because that's a huge undertaking to collect the data, know what questions to ask, figure out the purpose of the whole thing. Like it's a major brainstorm just to even get started on this. So I'm curious as to what you guys were trying to solve, or what you guys were trying to find, or why you guys did this.
Totally. I think that gets to another thing that's really deep in our DNA, which is how do we use research, qualitative and quantitative, to, one, build the best product and experience for homeowners and for contractors, but two, also like give back to this industry that has been so incredibly generous to us and letting us do ride-alongs when we had no business being in the field, where we didn't know the difference between a condenser and like a furnace, right? Like we were as knowledgeable about turret being like, why are we going up in the attic? The thing that does the heating and cooling is outside. And so I think part of it's also an act of giving back. And Josh, appreciate you recognize it was a big undertaking. We surveyed over 400 verified shoppers, so people that in the calendar year 2025 were actively shopping for a new home service appliance, primarily HVAC, but also some water heaters and some other things. And it was really this idea of trying to get inside the mind and figure out the attitudes of the modern homeowner, right? We've heard a lot and we've seen a lot about how different things are today than they were 5 years ago or 10 years ago, whether prices going up, whether it's concerns about macroeconomics, whether it's technology. And we wanted just to get to ground truth, to be like, what do homeowners today think, and where are they being served, and where are they having issues? And so that was really the background behind it.
And it was all done in, you said, in 2025?
It was all folks. The survey was conducted late summer, early fall, and was for all people that had been in the shopping experience in 2025. Yeah. So all relatively recent shoppers.
How do you find people that?
Yeah. Well, I'm also curious if it's changed a lot, because Lord knows, I think 2020 moving forward, things have changed crazy. And I feel like this is a feeling. I don't have statistics. I haven't done the research, but I believe that we made bank in 2020, 2021, 2022, because we were selling systems that should have been sold in 23, 24, 25, 26, and now we're feeling it. So I'm curious. Obviously, you did this in 25, but I'm curious if the habits have changed between then and now.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we're really excited is, given the incredible reception that we've gotten from contractors, and also some of the things it's allowed us to focus on internally, this will now be something we'll do every year. So a few years, Tersh will know the definitive answer to that. I think broadly what you'll see is, I think you do see there are certain maybe lasting truths that this calls out. How focused homeowners are on pricing, right? I actually don't think that's actually changed that much, even though I think often as an industry, we need to be reminded of that reality. Yeah. We can dive into it. But I do think like just some of the trends around how homeowners discover contractors, right? Like ChatGPT, Claude wasn't around 4 years ago, right? So that has changed. And so I do think that there is this interesting juxtaposition of some new truths, some new revelations, while also just really underscoring some things that probably there have been sort of the founding fathers of our industry who've been for many years telling us that price isn't the most important thing, regardless of what we might think.
Okay. I agree with you 100% on that one. Where, as contractors, are we making the biggest mistake right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think three things really.
I don't know if you have the answer to that. I don't have any idea. It just came
totally.
No,
I can tell you what the data says, right? Yeah. And for this, we'll focus really on the report, even though we also have a bunch of other data by the nature of our platform. I think the biggest thing is we think price matters a lot more than it actually does. 69% of homeowners say that price isn't the most important thing.
What do they say is the most important thing?
It depends on the person, right? Comfort, quality of install, energy efficiency. Like it depends, but it all gets to value rather than just price. Yeah.
Do you think the reason that's on the top of people's mind is because like when they call, the first question they're asking is, what's a ballpark range for something? Because they don't know the answer. And so they start this. So the contractor's like, all they care about is price. That's all they ever ask me. So I feel like there's almost like some recency bias of like, that's all they ask. So that must be all they care about. But when a homeowner has to fill out a survey and actually think through these things of like, what is really important to me and my home and my family? It's like, well, I don't want to have to keep calling back the HVAC guy because they did a shitty install. I want the new system that I invest in to last a long time because I'm going to be in this home. Like there's just a lot of different things go through their head that a contractor's just like, well, all they do is ask about price. They don't ask about the quality of the piece of equipment or the quality of my team. And so I feel like there's just, that's where some of this divergence happens. And there's just different things that they think because they see it, but they don't actually have a survey such as this to dive into those numbers.
Yeah.
I think that definitely contributes to it. I also think of the old adage of price is only the most important thing when you don't understand anything else. And if you truly, when me and my mom knew nothing about navigating this purchase, like what is it for that? Let alone CR2, right? Now it's even more confusing. Then what can we compare its price, right? I know that 7,000 is more expensive than 5,000. Yeah. And so I think that as an industry, and I'll be straight up, right? Like it is easier to sell toilet paper on Amazon than it is to sell a heating and cooling comfort system to a random home that you're walking into. It's a complex purchase.
If it's 115 degrees outside and nobody else even answer their phones, yeah, that's a shoe one. That one's a shoe in. But right now, this time of year, you're right, 100%.
Totally. And so I think it's just there is a lot of educating that when it happens, it makes it really clear to the homeowner and they are empowered to make the right choice for them. I think something else that we haven't really talked a ton about, but maybe the second mistake. One is we think price matters a lot more than it does. Two, as an industry, typically we present at homeowners. We basically lecture at homeowners, right? I'm going to give you a 20-minute spiel. And Josh, on the other side of it, you'll get to spend $20,000 with me, right? Like, what else do you spend $20,000 that you have to endear like a monologue to get through it? And so I think making it interactive and really empowering the homeowner, giving them choice, making it personalized is the second thing. And the third thing, and it's not rocket science, it's responsiveness. It's that reviews and reputations matter. It's how quickly are you responding back to folks? Are you following through? Are you doing the basics that it's really easy that when times are really busy and it's 115 degrees in Georgia, right? To let that stuff slip through the cracks.
Now, the education side that you mentioned, do we need to be like, I'll bring my mom up again. She has a doctorate in education. Do we need to have that? Or are you referring to, we need to start educating before they've even called us?
Yeah. Well, I feel
how
like
do we
Josh,
know what to educate them on?
Yeah. I feel like Josh might be able to share some thoughts on one part of it. I mean, I think the reality is that most homeowners know very little when they start these journeys, right? And so they don't need a 5-hour lecture on the basics of thermodynamics and how heating and cooling systems work. But 5 or 10 minutes of the basics and just even asking them questions about like, what is the trade-off? So one of the things that stands out to me, sitting around we don't have customers, we have partners. So one of our partners' offices, and someone calls in and they just bought a brand new variable speed, very high-end system. They call and they're like, it's not working. And of course, the person that's picking up the call is like kind of mortified. Like this person just spent a lot of money. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Like, why is it not, or like, how is it not working? They're like, we can't hear it. And we could hear the old system, but we can't hear this one. At which point they were like, oh, like, ma'am, it is working. It's just, this is now quiet. Yeah. And so that's part of education, is that a lot of times homeowners aren't even aware what's possible. Like their system doesn't have to sound like a freight train going by their patio when it kicks on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that actually is a common conversation that I have with people that like, and I've had that one for years since they first came out with variable speed blower motors. I mean, and then the inverters came out, or they became mainstream, and people are like, my unit never shuts off. They're looking at the fan outside, the physical fan, and they're like, well, we don't want it to shut off completely. We just want it to ramp down, just slow down. So it's like cruise control in your car. And like your car's cruise control speeds up, slows down. You don't have to put your foot on the accelerator. And it's honestly having a conversation just like that, framing it in a mind that they are familiar with, like cruise control, or what is it? What do they call it? Intelligent cruise control, where like it sees a vehicle in front of you and it starts slowing down automatically.
That shit scares me all the time.
Dude, I want to get closer to that car. Like I want them to know I'm back here so they get out the way.
So Waymos, like, the autonomous taxis in SF, they originally were incredibly like polite, where it was known that you could kind of cut them off and they'd always take it. They've recently changed the setting to make them confidently assertive. That's the official term, where that they're now not quite being so polite and constantly getting passed, because they were like the proverbial old lady driver, which I also like love that evolution, right? Which is like, we are now making our robots like a little bit more assertive and slightly less polite.
Yes,
like most humans,
100%. The option to flash your lights out too.
Zach, I got some questions, because as you and Tersh were talking, I had the report in the background just to get a little deeper into it. So you mentioned the piece about price, that contractors think it's a lot more important than it really is. Let's dive into how homeowners that you surveyed are finding contractors, because I know a lot of contractors really care about this, and this will get into some deeper questions, but I'm really curious as to what the survey mentioned when it came to like, how do we find who to work with or who to let in our home in the first place?
Yeah. Well, Josh, it sounds like you've done your homework. And maybe
I did it 30
Tersh.
seconds ago. So
No, that's great. But I only asked because now Tersh is like, it sounds like Tersh maybe is slightly less.
I'm a fast reader, so I'm the opposite of you guys. So I can read it really fast. Okay, cool. This is what I'm talking about.
We're still on Tersh and I are still on the first sentence, but we'll eventually read the whole report. But Tersh, here's my question to you. What percentage of homeowners do you think who shopped in 2025 found their contractor via like Gen AI, so Claude, ChatGPT?
I don't know. Because that's, I mean, depending on what age group we're talking to, I would probably say 5%.
Good guess. It was 3%.
Yeah, look at me go. I wanted to say 50,
So
but
Zach,
I knew that wasn't right.
and anyone that knows me on the marketing side or has even seen my post earlier today on Facebook, if you haven't, go check that out. But so what you're saying is I shouldn't throw all my marketing dollars into AI search just yet.
What I'm saying is that most likely tomorrow, 97 of your prospective homeowners will not find you via AI search. You might then beg the question, be like, hey, but Zach, I'm in a young community, right? Like I've got all these millennials around. At which point I'd say like, okay, fair point. It is slightly different with millennials. It's a whopping 4.5%.
Well,
So
you
still
remember,
doesn't really.
I mean, you probably remember this more than a lot of people, but there was a period of time where Amazon was really trying to get that market share, and they wanted to be able to say, hey, Alexa, or whatever, that's his name, right? Send a service technician here. My air conditioner broke, send somebody out here. And it just didn't catch on.
That's because the contracting industry freaking hated it.
They
I remember
really
when
did.
that Amazon Home Services came out, and
Yeah,
it was like
they're gonna take
$1,000 to install your air conditioner. And I'm like, oh, dude, this is not going to go well. Like, I get it. But again, they probably should have done a little more research and ride-alongs to figure out that was going to hit a brick wall.
Mm-hmm.
But I am interested to get back to the survey. So we've established that AI search isn't really mainstream yet. Where are they finding these people, and what? Because the avenues are not. Everyone would probably be like, "Well, 97% is Google, then, right?" Because that's where everyone else finds everything. I know it's not that. So what did you find in the survey?
Yeah. So Google is the leading source, but it is 34%, right? So it is the leading source, but it isn't even the majority. Yeah. Previously used, right? Had some previous relationship with that contractor. Nearly neck and neck with that was a referral from a friend, a neighbor, right? Social media, another sort of 10%. So what you see is Google still the largest chunk, but it's not a majority, right? It is basically Google. It is, I've interacted with them before. It is, I've heard about it from someone in my community, and a few percentage of the time I found it on ChatGPT.
Yeah, and then branding. They're more comfortable if they recognize the brand. And trust it. Yeah. Yeah,
that's super interesting. And I think how does the reputation, you mentioned reputation just a little bit previously. How does that play a part into how they select who comes in the home?
Yeah, it's great. It's a great question. Over 50% of homeowners say that online reviews was really critical for the contractor they ultimately selected, right? And so that is really important. And what is your presence, and what can homeowners understand about you and about the experience they'll have with you? And so that's a really important factor along this experience. And sort of paired with that, sure, there's online reviews, but it's also the reality that over half of the time, the reason why they are choosing a contractor is because they used them before, relationship, or they heard about it from their friend or their neighbor. Again, relationship, right? So I think,
and a lot of that relationship ties into reputation, because if they had a good experience, they're going to refer. So it's maybe not an online review, but it's a personal review of,
totally.
Hey, I worked with Tersh's company; they were great. Make sure to have them out.
Right? Totally. Which, jumping ahead a little bit, like that also means that for the homeowner, our industry really focuses on replacement. It makes sense. big ticket, really moves the needles for most contractors, 60 to 80% of their revenue.
Yeah.
And so when a homeowner lets you know, hey, we're not moving forward, like one, do you ever find that out? And we can talk about mechanisms to ensure that. But two, what is your response then? Because while they decided not to go with you, if you've treated them really well, particularly in that final moment, right? I always like to say the mark of someone's character is how they respond when you give them bad news. Right.
Burn
like
the
that's
bridges.
true. Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
We're burning this whole thing down. Yeah. Yeah. I'm coming and I'm burning your, no. I'm glad that's not recorded or anything. No. But I think that that's also really important, which is like, what do you do if things don't work out? Because that does build your reputation. And so what systems do you have in place to ensure that you are really treating every homeowner phenomenally and no one's falling through the cracks? We do these interviews with homeowners, send them down 3 minutes, et cetera, et cetera. And I asked one homeowner, I was like, how many contractors did you contact? She was like, 6. It's like 6?
That's a lot.
She was like, yeah. I that's what was my reaction. She was like,
Who wants
I was
6 contractors in their home?
Well, I mean, here's the interesting thing. She was like, I expect 3 of them wouldn't call me back or wouldn't show up. I was like, okay, so how many showed up? She was like, 3. I was like, makes sense. And so I think that drop off throughout the entire process, and that's where you see responsiveness and promptness and follow-up and communication is really important as well, because commonplace today is a lot of balls are getting dropped. And that's where I think it's really important that you have a sales process and a sales platform that ensures that no one slips through the cracks, not in an annoying way, but in a personalized way that is aware of the interactions that have happened to ensure that every homeowner has a phenomenal shopping experience all the way through whatever decision they ultimately make.
Okay. So I'm just assuming, because I don't know the answer to this, you are able to do that with Mantle.
You are correct. Yeah, absolutely.
How long is the follow-up process?
Good question. So it depends on the organization, depends on the homeowner. The way we think about it is like, we are all about trying to create a really phenomenal shopping experience. And part of that's what happens in the home, but it's also what happens before and after the seller, CA, selling tech leaves the home. And so for our system, we are able to generate in conjunction with the seller, right? We still believe that, hey, we send trained professionals into homes for a reason. They play a really important role. We shouldn't just be sending some generic message from some generic phone number that a homeowner's never seen after someone leaves the home. Instead, let's have it come from the seller. Let's have it be personalized to the conversation that's already happened. And let's have the cadence be determined by the interaction so far.
So you're saying that they actually, correct me if I'm wrong, they're pulling in the conversations that the technician had with the homeowner?
We are pulling in all of the phone calls and text conversation that happened either before or after the in-home visit.
So text and phone calls, transcriptions.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
Okay, I didn't know if you were able to like pull in like a Limitless or a Plot or something like that and be like, we mentioned this in the conversation that we had when we were talking about your Porsche that was in your garage. That'd be dope, by the way.
Totally. No, I love that idea. And I think there's a lot of really exciting places to expand into over time.
Yeah, as long as you follow the laws per state.
And you also get a lot of like pushback and whatnot. And so, in-home recording, there's a bunch of different nuances to it. I mean, one of the things I think is really interesting, regardless of whatever the verbal conversation that's happening, you are at some point going to an iPad or a laptop and you are showing options and you're creating a sales experience. All of that's recorded. And there's no recording compliance that's needed there. And so now you actually, for the first time, can see what options were presented to the homeowner. And did they spend time on all of them, or did they just race to the lowest option, right? And that's really important data, both for the seller tech after they leave the home, for the manager, for the owner, but also for the system to understand how do we think about the follow-up and the cadence in the case where it's not closing at the kitchen table. Because on replacement or new install or new system sales, we're commonly seeing 60 to 70% of the time, the person is leaving without the deal closed yet, right? And so therefore, it's really important what happens after you leave the home.
Yeah.
Oh, were you able to track that in your report as well?
We actually can track that via a bunch of other data that we have access to.
Got it. Yeah.
That's so powerful just to know that stuff. I was curious. I would just, because we mentioned pricing at the beginning and we went into some other topics, but we mentioned that we think that pricing is like the most important thing that a homeowner goes through, but it just because it's maybe not as important, a lot of people still search for it.
Totally.
Can we go into that just a little bit, especially being all Marcus Sheridan fans and pricing up front and all this kind of stuff? I feel like this is super interesting as well, that listeners would want to hear from, is like, what are they searching for when they do find a contractor's website? What kind of information is important to them when they're doing that initial search before someone's in the home?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think the results are both unexpected and surprising at the same time. I think the unexpected part, given all of Marcus Sheridan's work, given a bunch of other work, is 69% of the time, homeowners are actively looking for price and shopping before anyone comes into the home. And so that means the vast majority.
Did you guys ask any questions? And I don't know exactly what the survey looked like and stuff about what were they hoping to find? Like, just to get a ballpark, like what were they trying to find? Were they trying to find like, oh, $10,000 system, I'm going to go install that and hire that person?
Yeah, it's a good question. We asked a version of that, which was, hey, is what you found, was it useful and was it clear? Right? Because different people can look for different things. And that's the part that is really surprising to us, or at least was for us, was that only 15% of homeowners said that what they found was like useful and clear. The very vast majority, they looked for it, but their appetite didn't really get satisfied, right? They couldn't really find the information they were looking for.
So 7 out of 10, which whatever that is, over 420 some people, 7 out of 10 wanted to find some semblance of pricing information, and less than 2 out of 10 actually felt like they walked away like, hey, I have a pretty good understanding of what it's going to cost me when I go down this road and shop for this. So that's a huge discrepancy of people.
Massive, which also means it's a giant opportunity. And I think it's emblematic of something more broadly, which is homeowners come into this experience looking for certain things. And I think historically they leave it having very few of those met. Right? They're looking to understand. They're looking to have a responsive person on the other side. They're looking to be empowered and to really have choice and to navigate through it and to understand what's happening in their home. And historically, I think that we haven't done a great job delivering on that.
Yeah. And I completely agree with you. Being in the trades prior to owning a digital marketing company, like, it would have been fantastic to have data like this to help me, especially because I was doing a lot of the marketing strategy and the pricing strategy and everything else, and having data that could actually, I could like, okay, just like anyone in any business, where should I spend my time? Totally. We're talking about most people in the HVAC industry or plumbing, they all want to sell the big ticket items, whatever those are. And my hunch would be, whether it's, let's say it's something like drain cleaning, which can be a really big ticket item for a plumber, or an electrical panel or things like that, an electrical side, or a whole home electrical rewire. My guess is the process is very similar for big ticket items like an HVAC system, where I'm still looking for the same information. I'm still talking to friends and relatives who you've used in the past. All like the big ticket items, my guess is humans are very similar regardless of what industry you're in. So if you're listening to this and you're in electrical, you're in roofing, you're in whatever industry, my guess is the buying experience and the information from this report is going to be very similar to your industry, just applied a little differently versus what it is for like the HVAC industry. That would be my hunch. Obviously, we don't have data to back that up, but humans are human. We have this similar behavior for certain types of things that come into our life.
Totally. And we actually do have a bit of data where of the 422, most were HVAC, not all, right? There were water heaters, there were electrical panels. And so you do see this broader trend across home services. And I think it does really support your point, which is that this is something as an industry, right, that we really have an opportunity to do better on. And I think also one of the things that, to the question around motivation, was where we really wanted to get to is like, okay, so going into the new year, right? As we all are probably doing our, our budget planning, figuring out how we're going to rock 2026, regardless of whatever happened in 2025. Like, what are the sales tactics? What are the sales strategy that will actually work with the modern homeowner? And so in addition to the report, there's also 6 sort of data-driven insights. We can direct people online to go grab them about what really will work, informed by this data, and about what's really key. And so I think that's one of the other things that we're really excited to sort of like give back, if you will, to the industry that's given us so much.
Yeah, that is so awesome that you guys put this together. Like, being in the digital marketing side of things, I love seeing stuff like this and data, because I've done a lot. I mean, I've seen questions on Facebook groups: are digital marketing agencies dying and all this kind of stuff? Because it's the question in everyone's mind is this stuff, especially if you're even somewhat familiar with anything with AI, is what's going to happen. Everyone, it doesn't matter the industry. Like Tesla, I mean, Elon Musk has got this big proposal of $1 trillion package to get all these robots in homes and all this. Like, robots in homes are going to be able to fix stuff at some point. Like, all of these things are going to get impacted because their fine motor skills will continue to improve. So it's so interesting to see where we're at now. And what will be even more interesting is when you have a second year's worth of data, and then we can compare where things are headed. Because then you start seeing trends and you're like, okay, this one was small here, or this one was big, and maybe it's not so big anymore. Let me shift my attention a little bit, because at some point this isn't going to be a really big thing. And I think it's really cool what you guys have started. And obviously, I mean, just me glancing at this report, I'm saying glance like 5 minutes, was like, oh, this is really good stuff. Like, I create a whole bunch of content around it. Like, this is great. I can help my contractors and my clients.
Sure.
So it's really cool that you guys put this together. For people that want to get their hands on this report and read it in its entirety and really study it, where do they go do that?
Yep. You can just go to our website, use Mantle. So usemantel.com /survey. And I imagine we can work together to get that into the show notes. So just usemantel.com /.
Like mantle in your home.
Like the mantle in your home, just use mantle.com.
Okay. And I'm assuming that's the same place they can go if they want to get a demo of your guys' software.
Absolutely.
They can go book there and
Absolutely. And yeah, I think one of the things that commonly questions and reactions that we've gotten is like, okay, it's clear now what homeowners want. How do we now go like execute and deliver on that? And that's more than anything what we're really in the business of, is helping really phenomenal contractors close more and delight homeowners. And I think one of the really humbling things as we sort of reflect back on 2025, and we're a relatively young company, is to see the impact that we've been able to drive for our contractors. And as you can tell, we're a pretty data-driven organization. One way to say is like we're a bunch of nerds. But separate from that, like I think if I think about reliable comfort, using our software, they are making 48% more on every sales appointment they are running, adjusting for inflation. So the CA is bringing home 48% more, and the owner is bringing home 48% more, and we feel really privileged that we get to help them do that.
Isn't that something when you stop trying to sell something and let someone buy something, they actually buy something more expensive? I've always thought, I've heard this numerous times through a bunch of different things, and it was always so interesting and fascinating to me. But then I realized, like, when I start searching online for a car, I start searching online for anything, I'm like, you see something, you're like, oh, there's a better one? What's the better one? What's the difference? And if it's really a big difference, you're like, oh, yeah, like, that's more interesting to me than this one, because this one solves all my problems. This one only solves like half my problems.
Totally.
And it's wild to me when you present people with options, because even presenting options is like something in the trades that's taken a long time. People like they only give the one option that they think the homeowner should go with, instead of like present a few, let them pick. Just little things like that are so, it can make such a difference in their average tickets, in their revenue, and their profit, and everything else that comes along with the company.
And also in the homeowner's experience, right? Like homeowners walk away and they are happier. right? Their needs are better met. They feel better seen. They feel better served, right? And I think that's really core to the ethos, which is if you do this really well, it is good for the homeowner and it's good for you, right? And I think you mentioned options, which is huge, but also how do you let someone be empowered to add or remove an air scrubber from that option, right? And to understand that an air scrubber will deliver fresh air. And likewise, you leave the home, how do you make sure that homeowner doesn't fall through the cracks and that they are getting followed up with? And also, and this is the part that I almost have to give like a heart attack warning to owners, which is one of the powers of our platform, is you get visibility into how quickly your sellers are responding back to homeowners, right? When they get texts, when they get called, and you can see when things are slipping through the cracks. And so I always warn owners, like, you're going to see some things, and it might like cause a little bit of a reaction, because what they would like to think is like, hey, we've done all of this work. We've done everything right. And we got out to the home and we paid $1,000 or whatever to get out to the home. And we do all of this, right? And then the homeowner calls us a day later and we're not picking up, right? And so that visibility and ensuring that we solve that, I think is really, really key to it. And
I can appreciate that a lot. Because when I was in the trades, we didn't have the technology quite yet, because I got out of the trades in 2021. And with digital marketing, so like all of our calls with clients are recorded with Fathom. All of our emails are recorded with HubSpot. All of our text messages are like every single way they communicate with us is recorded. So I know if somebody's not doing their job and the client's not getting back to them and just different things like that. It's so important to track that stuff, especially now that we all have the tools and resources. It's so enlightening to realize who are actually the team members who actually care about your core values and carrying your company's mission versus the ones that are like, they're here for a job. They don't really care if they're going to take care of a homeowner or not. They just want to get paid.
Totally.
And really be insightful and also create a culture of people that actually want to respond quickly.
Totally.
And do the thing that you need to do. So it's super cool to see that being built into a software for the trades.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I think one of the things that we feel really strongly about is, if you think about what it's like to go buy an iPhone online, right? And how easy, how slick, how informational, how educational it is. Like, we're really on that motion of how do we bring what is table stakes across any other purchase, or the sales tools, right? Like, as someone who sells software, there's all these tools that I have. How do we bring that to the trades, right? How do we help sort of bring the trades forward from sort of being in the past by 20 or 30 years? And so we're really on a mission. And I think one of the things that we recently launched, that just like the reaction, I don't know, like I think at times, like, you know, Mantle feels a little bit like my baby. And so like occasionally like it does something, it's like, oh, that's like really special. I think one of the most fun features is when you used to be in the trades, Josh, do you think your proposals were ever shared with other contractors?
Oh, I know they were. So quick story on this, and I know we're coming up, we're actually past time, but that's okay. This conversation's been great. My wife my wife was in sales at HVAC companies. I actually brought her into the trades, and then she worked for a couple other HVAC companies over a period of about 6 years. The last company she worked at was about a $10 million company. They had like 6 or 7 salespeople. They literally would give the homeowner $25 off of their system install to get the other people's proposals.
Amazing.
And they were
amazing.
At that time, a lot of them were still handwritten. They weren't not all of them were service tight and stuff.
Yeah.
But they had a stack of them in their office, so they knew everybody's price.
Sure. And here's the crazy thing is, you're that other contractor. You have no idea who's looking at it or any visibility into it, right? Like, you know, it happens just like, you know, the kids are off like doing whatever the kids are doing like after hours, but you didn't have visibility into it. And so we launched a feature called Radar that actually tells the seller, right? Tells the organization when their proposals are shared with competitors, and also gives you visibility into who it was shared with and what they're looking at. So now, if we take that stack of paper, right? Like, you now know it was shared with XYZ competitor in town, right? And you have that visibility. You also have the visibility when the homeowner opens up or when the homeowner shares it with their husband, right? And I think it's that ethos, right? That, which was sort of relatively commonplace when I was at Amazon or on Shopify, that is what we're trying to channel every day into it. And I do have one quick funny story, which I
can tell it's like you're proud of this baby, like to start taking steps, and now you're like, oh my god, this is the coolest baby ever.
Yeah. And then sometimes it's still like, like poos itself and like throws up on itself. But like, it's not fully grown up yet. But it's funny. I showed radar to one person, and they're like, Zach, you know what I'm gonna do with it? I was like, no, what? So, well, I'm gonna reach out to that salesperson and I'm gonna offer him a job, right? You now also start to see who are the other really good sellers in your market.
That is a great strategy, actually. Always be recruiting. That's what I've
always be recruiting. Totally.
Yep. That's awesome. Zach, this has been fantastic. Anyone listening to this, even if you don't feel like you got a lot going on, you don't want to implement all this stuff, at least go read the report. You may be incentivized by what you find inside that report to do something, especially as we're talking through 2026. And if anything, if we know anything from the last few years, it's all going to change. Like everything's going to change, and it's going to continue to adapt, and until we figure out whatever the new normal is with all these different things. And maybe the new normal is just people find us in a multitude of different ways, and we have to be prepared to show up on all of those ways in a way that speaks highly to our reputation and our brand. So Zach, really appreciate you hanging out with us today. It's usemantle.com. It's mantel.com. And for you guys listening, thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you again next time.
Thanks, Joe.